This is the powers that be, Sergeant Busy, coming to you live from Fallujah. Yeah.
Tonight, American forces are inside Fallujah.
U.S. and Iraqi troops are pounding the city of Fallujah.
Oh, yes.
You hear that? You hear that? That shit going down on Fallujah. That's where we're going to be in a matter of hours.
Coalition forces have assaulted Fallujah for the purpose of putting down this insurgency.
This is a frontal assault on a major city, the kind of fight they like.
Red's clearing some stuff over here, so we have to watch our fire to the left.
Combat beers. Combat beers! Woo!
Hey, turn that on! Turn it on!
Our guys are in the building right there to our direct front. Team walking around, running back to the Humvee now.
Marines of Charlie come are like every Marine unit, man. They're from all over the country, all walks of life, races, ethnicities, you know, backgrounds, experiences. They're just a team. They're just a family.
There was no shortage of valor. Absolutely no shortage. It was bravery everywhere you turned. I've referred to them more than once, quite often, as Saint Warpig, because they were the guys that could and would show up to anything.
Right. Hey, my name's Gil Juarez. I was the company commander of Charlie Company, 1st LAR.
What the heck is LAR? Light Armored Reconnaissance. I'm like, oh, cool, recon. Yeah, not really, but something like it.
None of us knew what LAR was, what an LAV was, anything related to it. I just remember some corporal saying we call it lazy-ass riflemen, and I thought in my head, thank God.
Light Armored Reconnaissance performs what the Army would refer to as a cavalry role.
We're mobile, and we can move about the battle space really fast.
It's a special operations capable mechanized reconnaissance unit. Tip of the spear.
Brief description of an LAV is it's an 8-wheeled light armored vehicle that's semi-aquatic.
An engineer and architect took together a boat and a tank. He combined them together. He decided to remove the tracks and put 8 wheels on it, throw on the props. He borrowed a chain gun from a helo, slapped it on, made an exceptional vehicle. That's what an LAV is.
You have a scout compartment in the back.
Scouts were like everything from 0311s to assaultmen or mortarmen. Like heck, there was even like mechanics would work from time to time, be in there. Even you know, MIMS clerks, guys that would order parts, were oftentimes scouts or drivers.
What a Warpig is it's our call sign.
1st Light Armored Reconnaissance, Charlie Company Warpigs.
For us, you know, being tied to that call sign, it was like, well, we're the Warpigs, and that is my pig.
The pig, which is what we call our LAVs, because we refer to them looking like pigs.
And that pig becomes everything to you. Living out of that thing is an interesting experience in and of itself.
When you're on a vehicle, you do everything together. You share fire watch, you have meals, you know, you watch each other while you're making a head call, whatever it is, you know, and that's where you feel comfortable.
What are you doing? Take a look, I'm fishing. Oh, that's sick.
LAR scouts were such a smaller contingent than a regular, I want to say, like a regular infantry battalion. There was so few of us. Our battalion allotments of ammo and weapon systems were far more than a regular infantry battalion.
I think we have better training as far as a little bit more smaller fire teams. So we were able to, you know, train as smaller sections.
LAR was kind of like a unique place because it was made up of a hodgepodge of people.
Garrison Marines, you know, you're sitting out there, we're training, you're doing a lot of things that are miserable with these guys every single day. You spend more time with these guys than, you know, you did with your siblings at home growing up. It's something that you don't experience with anything else in your life.
The barracks where you built that camaraderie.
This is my roommate, Edward.
It becomes like that brotherhood.
We were tight, so me, Matt, and Kyle hanging out, being stupid.
A lot of us had been together for almost 2 years at that point. It was a really tight-knit group, and you didn't have, I think, the normal churn that you see sometimes in the Marine Corps. I think it made us a lot closer to each other. It also made it harder when, you know, things went bad.
So going into our second deployment, I think it was a very tight unit because we've already had that experience from OIF-1.
We had a few new drops, but for the majority, we were pretty seasoned.
So I got attached to Charlie Company in September. It's tough because I was still an outsider.
Everybody say hi.
Our company went on an Okinawa deployment.
We weren't sure we were going anywhere other than Okinawa. And then the rumors started happening, right? The Lance Corporal Underground started working.
I also, in my brief time, considered myself the actual source of the Lance Corporal Underground, something I'm very proud about. The Marine Corps is run by Lance Corporals. They're the minions doing the work. And you'll be surprised at what a little conversation in a smoke pit what kind of info will come out of that.
You get the scuttlebutt, you know, where guys are just, you know, talking. They're like, oh, there's something big going on.
1st Battalion, 3rd Marine Regiment, or Battalion Landing Team 1-3. We got a call from them after being on Okinawa for about a month. They called us up and said, hey, we think we might end up going to Iraq. We want more light armor.
But I remember being in the room when the word was passed that we were going to Iraq, and we were like leaving very soon. And then that very soon turned into like, pack your shit, we're going.
We had a meeting with the MU folks and the BLT folks, and they're like, we have room for 13 vehicles. There's generally 25 vehicles, a standard company.
We were left then with kind of a shell of a company, and we had a couple weeks where we just didn't know what we were gonna do.
So what they had was an extra log and a whole bunch of extra scouts.
I put as many scouts that I could in that vehicle.
It's really just a hodgepodge of what they had available.
So we were kind of this unique kind of ragtag kind of complement for Fallujah.
The flag that we put on. That is awesome. So yeah, it definitely was a motley crew, like a hodgepodge of like just a bunch of guys from different platoons. I always said that we were like the bastards, like they didn't care about us, they just threw us in one vehicle, like you guys are good.
And then next thing you know, within 4 days, we were on ship. 5 days, we were steaming away.
There's fishy fish. What's up?
Taping your CDs or what?
Nah, I'm just you know, showing Kuwait what we sleeping in Kuwait.
Man, we didn't know. We thought we were going to be in Kuwait for a while, just sitting there as like a reserve force. Then we started pushing north.
We're all gonna die.
I seemed to be the only one in our company that knew we were going to Fallujah. I was a news junkie, and after the Blackwater guys got, you know, hung up on the bridge and burned, I was hearing a lot of talk about fresh fighting and stuff like that.
The city just became a stronghold for the insurgents, and it was kind of this giant tumor.
We get kind of rumblings like there's going to be something big, like something big is happening.
Just videotape us while we're in a combat zone. You're gonna be the one to get us all killed. Way to go. Way to go, be an ass pirate. Yeah. You can't cover your sector of fire with the video camera though. I can't.
Basically, we're doing patrols around, like kind of containment-like patrols around the city of Fallujah.
We had a combat journalist attached to us, Scott Peterson from Christian Science Monitor, great warrior, by the way.
You know, we're doing patrols down into like between Camp Fallujah and Abu Ghraib, south of the cities, and that's when we had our first casualty.
We were conducting patrols outside of Camp Fallujah. Next thing I knew, I was riding an LAV on a shit show wave. Huge explosion through the vehicle.
Somebody got fucking IED'd.
The vehicle pitches forward, you know. I kind of come to a little out of it. That was the first time any of us had gotten hit.
Every day we were doing assaults on the southern side of the city. So a feint, a fake attack. We'd go there, we'd shoot at them, they'd shoot back, we'd leave. The next day we'd go there, shoot at them and leave.
As we did these feints to kind of close on Fallujah, we're collecting on how is the enemy responding to these different things we're doing, and so we could understand their defensive scheme and maneuver. So those shaping actions had some effect, but what they did internal for the force, we were getting Marines used to closing on the city, kind of inoculating the Marines for what was to come.
I think we were about 900 meters shy of the actual southern edge of the city. They quickly began ranging our vehicles with mortars, you know, small arms, medium and heavy machine guns.
Our platoon had been tasked with going in and trying to draw some enemy fire, and we did. And I remember just thinking, hell yeah, this is what it's all about, you know. And I remember the bullets hitting in front of our face and the dirt splashing up in our face from the enemy fire, and not thinking anything of it. I was excited. I mean, that's what I signed up to do. I joined to go fight and kick in doors, and that's what I finally got to do. So I was pumped. Back then, you know, I thought I was invincible.
I think for us, that seemed like, okay, this is, you know, some action. Everybody was ready to go. And I don't think it was until we got hit in November that everyone recognized, like, this is going to be a different fight.
The company commander, Gil Juarez, he had actually gave me a secondary, job there in the company. I was a company intel officer, so I had a MIMS clerk by the name of Lance Corporal Jason Smith.
So I remember we had just gotten done with the chow hall. We finished eating, and then we got the word that we're moving on in, and so we loaded up.
There's a block of C4.
We're at Camp Fallujah. We get the call to stage.
That was fucking. You hear that? You hear that? That shit going down on Fallujah. That's where we're gonna be in a matter of hours. So hours. If this tape gets out, tell my family that I love them.
Ready? Oh yeah. Tell me you're not scared.
Hey. It's a big man to admit that he's scared, and I'm a little bit scared of it.
And the idea was that 6 battalions, 2 Army and 4 Marines, were going to line up along that berm, and each battalion was going to cut through that berm in their own lane and then attack on line. So 6 battalions attacking on line, pushing through the city like a giant squeegee.
In the near future, this evening, we're going to be taking off. Basically, we're going to be crossing the big MSR. Our platoon is going to basically bring up all the line companies, all the straight leg regular grunts, through the berm, the breach area of the berm, so they can get put into the north end of the city of Fallujah. Once we get into the city, we're going to start kind of flanking and screening to the side where there's not going to be any grunts, because we're going to protect their left side, so none of the insurgents, none of the guys are going to come to attack them.
Basically, blah blah blah. He's a dirty tramp.
Basically, we're gonna kill a whole bunch of motherfuckers.
They were told, right? We're coming. If you're a civilian, you need to leave the city. So it was not a secret.
As an LAR guy, I got told as a lieutenant, we don't do mount training because you'll never do a mount fight. And then there we are. We're going into Fallujah now.
You know, in mount training, military operations in urban terrain, the casualty rate is like 85%. You can't go into an urban environment like that and not take casualties.
At the time, Captain Juarez had a meeting with the whole company. He says, look, this is going to be a big battle.
Gil made a really good speech, like he does all the time. The man is, I don't know, I say like more than a man, less than a god, you know? And he said, gents, before we go, like you guys need to make peace with your maker. Like you need to like sort your personal affairs so that you can go in with a clear mind and conscience.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact words. You got to fight with a happy heart. Our business is combat, and there's no guarantees in combat. And the probability was, we were going to lose guys. Death is part of our business. I want you to be the most effective, efficient, and ethical killer on the battlefield, and I want you to be harder to kill than the enemy. Set your fears aside. Let's focus on the mission. Take care of each other.
I just remember sitting there and just looking at everybody kind of like, oh man, this is real. Like we're going to be getting into something big, you know?
I had accepted that I was going to die in Fallujah. I accepted with all what they were saying, what was going to happen. I had already accepted that I wasn't going to go home.
And I mean, there were some butterflies. There were some, it was fear. It was excitement. You realize that something big is going to happen, and it's going to be ugly on all sides.
So we definitely knew that this was going to be a real fight. This was not, a simple push through a city, and this was the real deal. This was our generation's way city.
Nothing exciting out there.
No, nothing to see. We'd been sitting kind of like,
north of the city, waiting on the order to begin the assault. I was gonna be the guy with the bulldozer. It was gonna go up, make a breach lane through this berm just north of the city.
There's a railroad, elevated railroad line outside the city, suspected to have heavy emplacement of IEDs.
We're currently sitting about 800 meters from the beginning of the city. We're in the northern part of the city, and they're going to send up in a couple of minutes 3 big dozers they're going to take up there. They're going to doze down the berm, and on go the grunts. Everybody goes in.
Night came, the rain came, and then the white phosphorus came.
It's like a scene out of Star Wars. The tracers and everything are going. Explosions, chaos, you know, radio chatter, confusion.
We're being shot at.
Yeah, in the first 24 hours, I probably had about maybe a dozen different fire missions that we were calling in that night.
How many munitions did I drop in the first few days? I would say a couple thousand rounds probably, and that was just me.
So we get up there to the breach, the bulldozer kind of goes squirrely. It's kind of starting to do its own thing. And I remember Mike Aubrey, the other platoon commander, has to get off his vehicle and like chase this thing down in the middle of the night, in the middle of this firefight, establish communications with this guy again to get him to the breach lane to start going through.
We were going to secure that breach site, and then we were going to guide the engineers forward so they could cut through the berm. It did not go according to plan.
There's something wrong, like the bulldozer can't get through, it takes forever.
So they sent the engineers out, they tried to push through one of the bulldozer got stuck, and then they tried to use more explosives on the railroad tracks, it didn't work. They used the other bulldozer, that bulldozer got stuck.
Hour goes by, we're still at the breach site. Another hour goes by, we're still at the breach site. It's an all-night ordeal, just a total debacle.
Mike Downing was a young combat engineer that got attached to us. He had a very small 2-man team. They're down there clearing that area, and Mike Downing was hit, and we evacuated him, immediately, and we got him out of there. We got him back to the hospital. He actually got evacuated to Germany. Don't know exactly what happened, but his body just shut down on him, and he passed away.
But like while this is going on, my scouts had pushed up there, so they're on the breach. They're like securing the site, waiting for the bulldozer to get up to go through, and one of the scouts trips.
He was all Rambo'd out with grenades and flashbangs all over his vest. When he jumped on the berm, he hooked a pin to the flashbang.
And I'm looking, and I'm watching this whole thing happen through my NVGs, and I see him roll on his back and frantically start grabbing at his chest. It was too late. The flashbang goes off, right? And it takes off part of his, his fingers. So, all right, we haven't even gone into the city, and now I'm dealing with this.
Tanks were getting hit with mortars. There was just a lot of confusion, a lot of indirect fire. We could tell from the looks of it that we were in for a hell of a fight.
From there, it was just chaos.
And I remember vividly, like, it not being until, like, daylight. The next day, like, we're finally in the city.
Fallujah's a small town, right? It's 5 kilometers, about like 3.5 kilometers. It's very concentrated, dense.
Pushing into the city, just, pushing in front of the vehicle, and it was just like that eerie, empty, like, dead city for the most part. I mean, just no life. You just hear these big eruptions of gunfire, and then it'd be quiet.
You're just sitting there and you kind of catch something out of the corner of your eye.
It was real quiet. It was eerie.
So we're driving down there, and there's like dead dudes on the side of the road, buildings burnt out on fire, vehicles on fire, and we're kind of just like going down. It's just like really quiet, like it's like morning.
The first dead body that I saw, I'll always remember, laying on the road, there was about 6 or 7 insurgents, like from the waist down, they were just missing and all their intestines were out. And it was the first real dead body that I had seen. And so I was like, wow, man, this is real. It was a scary time.
And I recall, seeing the first enemy body in the streets, and it was pretty clear from where the artillery impact was that, that was our fires from the night before.
And people started to realize, like, hey, this is going to be the real deal. We're about to lose a lot of bodies. We're going to lose a lot of Marines.
Lieutenant Weber, he said, hey, scouts out. And so we're like, oh man, okay, now it's go time, you know, and man, I was scared. I was like, oh man, I was so scared.
I look over and I see this guy in like tracksuits, like the black Adidas pants and a white t-shirt and sandals. He pops out and he lifts his arms and he squats down and he's got an RPG. Then he shoots this thing, you know, and it goes right over my head.
This RPG goes ripping by, and then, you know, the 25 millimeters going off, and, you know, all of a sudden we're in it.
And that was close, so I open up on him and I just start spraying.
Like it was a little hectic, the very first initial push into the city. I can remember hearing the rounds hitting our, you know, side of our vehicle. I have a video of DeBlanc's down, and he's on the radio, and I said, I want to get up and I want to look at it. I want to look. And he's like, no docs allowed.
Yeah, no shit. Are you taking fire? These guys are fun. Are you taking fire? No.
Let me get up there. Let me get up. Let me get up.
You can't get up. No format allowed.
Maggot, let me up. Super quiet, and then all of a sudden, dude, it just went off. This RPG comes flying by my vehicle, and it was like, whoa! And Fish is in the back, and Magaoay's in the back, and they were shooting the saw off the sides of the vehicle, and it went flying by, and it went directly into Matty Yoda's vehicle.
We took a rocket to the front of the vehicle, and I just remember the explosion, a ton of smoke, and then just knowing that we had to get out of that spot so we could evaluate what had gone on. And Pintilli, his knees had taken a bunch of shrapnel, and then I had taken some in my hand, my head, and luckily there was an Army support vehicle there with a bunch of medics, and they patched us up.
I think by the end of the first day, we found a house that was in our battalion sector. We set it up as a company CP, and we started running combat patrols.
Towards the end of the day, they started playing this chant over the speakers in all the mosques.
The Iraqi translator said, they said something like, pick up arms and kill Americans in the name of Allah or some shit like that.
And it was really eerie, and it had some like horses and gunshots.
We're 24 hours in, not even. Reality was setting in real quick, like, oh, this is way different than anything we'd been in.
First few days, you know, we were tired continuously, you know, fatigued already, but kind of exciting in a sense.
It was incredibly like a high tempo. Like definitely the first like 24, 36 hours, I don't think anybody slept. You're so tired, you're hallucinating. You've got to come up with a rest plan. You've got to do something. I remember we had pushed in, we had occupied this house.
We see this big kind of a mansion looking thing with this big brick wall, and we're like, hey, let's park this thing in the living room and pull the vehicle into the house, get it out of the street. You know, we don't want to park it on the side of the street, come out the next morning and like the rims are gone.
Had occupied this thing. Guys are taking their turns, taking like, you know, 2 or 3 hour naps, just trying to get something in. At night, it would be like we'd go out and you'd go on these little like security patrols, right? And then you'd get into like sporadic gunfights.
And we dispersed into the city, and we would clear a house and we'd take a foothold and then just sit there, and then that would kind of be our base of operations, and then we would go out and start clearing houses.
After we would establish ourselves, we would have blocks of homes to clear throughout a day, and once we started clearing our blocks, these houses were so close together, so we were able to we would clear up for one structure and then go rooftop to rooftop with our expandable ladders, and it's obviously safer and easier to clear top down.
If you clear the building from the top down, they always feel like they can run out the front door.
Is there a room right there? Finish shooting.
They're less inclined to fight as hard because they'll just flee. But what they don't know is that there's an LAV at the end of that street, and they're gonna run out the street and get mowed down. And so that was the tactic.
The homes, everybody would kind of like make a joke that, oh, these were like mud huts and these were like small structures. These were well-built, established, poured concrete homes. They were like indestructible. Most of the houses had these center stairwells that were just meat grinder death trap.
You know, day to day, every day seemed like the same day. Groundhog's Day over and over again, just clearing houses. They all kind of blend together.
You know, I would say in these house-to-house, street-to-street fighting, it was like pot shots. You get sprayed, and then you're like, where the heck did that come from?
I don't see him, I don't see him. You see where the shots are coming from?
Or you see a guy pop up and shoot at you, and then he's gone. And man, it feels like you're fighting ghosts. It felt like you were fighting ghosts.
I mean, it was tough because they were very, very patient. I mean, and there was a lot of times you'd get shot at and not even have a clue where it's coming from. So you kind of, I mean, you always had to be on your toes.
They definitely had some formal training from someone somewhere. They knew what they were entrenched, man. They knew what they needed to do and what they were there for.
Hey, tell everybody hold their fire to the 2 detonate points. Top.
Everything was group effort. If you shot, we all shot. We were killing by groups. Nightly rest and daily rest was just whenever you could. If we had a second that you could just sit down and sleep, you know, you would.
Man, turn that shit.
And while all those guys were getting their Z's, those mechanics were fixing their shit.
But my rest, like I mentioned as a mechanic, was to work on all the vehicles. And I had vehicles from every single platoon coming at all hours of the day. Yeah, I don't recall getting much sleep then.
So every morning at first light, we'd have our task, our blocks that we would hit that day. They'd say, hey, Sergeant Boyd, you guys are going to clear from this number to this number and all the homes basically in between.
This is where we're at right here.
Right here?
Yeah. All right, basically all these little things right here are like one room concrete structures, no bigger than this, but there's an ass ton of them. We're gonna be clearing all of them. So do you guys have any questions on this?
There's more than one line.
Maps.
At least I had something.
Fuck the maps.
And I would armor up. I would have several pounds of TNT. I would have C4, dozens of 40 mil launchable grenades. I would have hand-thrown smoke grenades, regular hand grenades. We'd have half dozen, a dozen of those apiece. I jumped on a scale and I was well over 300 pounds. And you'd be lightened up by the afternoon. Very munitions intensive.
Target!
Days and days of combat, and every day living through it. You know, every house you clear, a little bit more confidence, a little bit more arrogance. I was confident. I was confident in myself. I was confident in our fire team. Felt like I was invincible.
I mean, we were 19, 20 years old. You feel like you're invincible. You think you're invincible.
I mean, man, it's a rush. It's like the biggest rush you can have when you're blowing open a door or whatever. It's an adrenaline rush that you can't get from anything else. We lived off of it. Still at that point, you know, we all thought we were invincible.
You go on these patrols, you take shots, you'd return fire. And at that time, we hadn't taken any casualties, so it wasn't heavily contested like it would become in a few days.
1-8 was on our flank, and I tasked Weber to go make contact with our adjacent unit. And we're not talking like long distance, right? Like this is a very small city. So he's literally like just driving down the street to his neighbor's house to go link up with 1-8.
Mission of the November 11th, Bravo Company, 1st Battalion, 8th Marines was like literally the unit next to us. So we were to tie into their, I guess, their left flank and kind of just provide cover for them as they went into their assault. We were just a supporting effort.
The morning of November 11th, we woke up from probably one of our first good days rest. And one of the first people I saw was Burns. We talked for a little bit. It was time for us to mount up. And I told him, I was all, you be safe. And he was all, you be safe too. And we mounted our vehicles.
Our company CP was at this corner building here. This is the main road, if you can see right here where the fold's at. That's where the portion of the November 11th happened.
We're kind of observing and looking down these like long, city streets and just watching. 1-8 goes across the street and you see all these insurgents like blocks away start to maneuver to try to like counter their assault. So I'm like, all right, well, we can't, that's why we're here. We can't let this happen. So we start going, we start shooting, right?
I think even Ward was quoted over the radio saying like, smoke your last cigarette, boys, we're heading into engine country. We all knew from that point as we were cruising down, like, we're about to go get into it.
We're shooting, it's enough to kind of like slow them down, but we're definitely not deterring them, right? They're continuing to maneuver forces to counter 1-8.
It seemed like they were trying to lure some of us in, but they were constantly shooting at people, so something had to be done. We ended up going down the street. Our vehicle actually got hit with an RPG. It went through our tire, and I was sitting inside the vehicle, and the whole thing's just, you hear a loud boom. All right, this one's real again. All right, so we go there, quiet. We get there, just absolutely quiet.
We got the call for scouts out, so we hopped out.
My directive from Weber was to take the scout team and check for improvised explosive devices or anything out of the ordinary.
We come across a pile of 155s.
And I halted the fire team because we spotted a pile of like 155 shells.
And I was like, oh, this is it.
So I signaled back to Lieutenant Weber, and gunfire just erupted from everywhere. I mean, every direction.
Everything just kicked off, and it was just gunfire from everywhere.
All hell kind of broke loose. A lot of small arms and machine gun fire from weapons and rooftops and things like that.
And it was chaos.
All the vehicles started engaging main guns, coax, 240s.
What I could pick up from the radio was somewhere between 10 and 20 enemy fighters had emerged in this small street complex.
We were stacked up on this corner, trying to cover off this corner as we were watching the LAVs next to us being ambushed.
And meanwhile, we're just getting hit from everywhere. It was 360.
This goes on for a while. They're not dumb. And they would have like these blankets and towels hanging from the windows, and all of a sudden you'd see, it was like you'd see a ghost move. And by the time you try to acquire a target to, lay some effective rounds down, they'd be gone. And all of a sudden, like another one would open up, and you're just like, holy shit, dude. Like, meanwhile, we're getting blasted from the other side. It was a hornet's nest.
You don't know who's actually shooting at you, and then you get, shot at from different angles. You got rounds hitting your feet all around. It was absolutely insane.
So we're kind of stuck on this wall, but we're just getting hammered. So we're just shooting everywhere we can.
They started saying, hey, we're taking heavy fire. We need reinforcements. Staff Sergeant Holder said, hey, we're going to start pulling forward.
We get a call, first platoon's been engaged. We're going to back them up. This guy runs out in the middle of the street with an RPG, Nathan's vehicle, swung that 25 millimeter and put a 3-round burst in the guy's face. And I was just sitting here like wondering like who runs out in the middle of the street like that? So we push down, my corpsman engages. I'm thinking to myself, that was probably the only time out of any combat deployment where I thought, this is the end.
We've had to get back into the vehicle. It wasn't a fight that was really winnable.
And so we're pinned up against this wall. We kind of move back. Lieutenant Weber signaling us to come back to the vehicle. And so one by one, we kind of made our egress.
I'm suppressing all the windows, all the doors, and I get this feeling telling me that I should duck. As soon as I duck, a burst of machine gun hits right where my head would have been above the vehicle. And I was like, fuck, I need to move.
And that was when it was, we were told that one of the scouts had been shot.
So I went back to the rear of the vehicle, started suppressing some more, and that's when I got hit.
George Armendariz gets hit like by at least, 3 PKM rounds through his calf. I think it's pretty bad. We're gonna have to get, like, we need to get him out of here. They're pulling him back and starting to evacuate him. The look was like, man, this isn't good. We're out here like exposed to all of this. What are we gonna do? So that's when I tell Holder, my platoon sergeant, Sam Holder, like, hey man, like, I need you, push your vehicle up, push it up, and I need you to basically get in front of the scouts so I can get him out of here without hesitation. Boom, he moves up.
Sam Holder, seeing this, brings his vehicle in front of them as a bullet block so the scouts can get in and get Armanderas into the vehicle. During this time, he's getting that brunt of those bullets.
And Staff Sergeant Holder was like, Kada, I need you to move forward. And I was thinking, shit, how much deeper are we getting into this? You know, how much, you know, further do we need to go? Because we're already taking heavy fire now. All of a sudden, you know, the bullets just, we were like a magnet at that point. I remember hearing just ding, 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 all over across our vehicle.
I see 3 little silhouettes on the rooftop. I sat there and just started hosing it down.
And my main gun goes down. Like the 25 millimeter breaks. Kyle's down in there. He rips the gun apart, breaks the gun down, tries to rebuild it, puts it back together. He's like, tries to put it back into cycle. Nothing. I give him my 240. Kyle's shooting with the 240. I've got my M16. And these guys are coming. They're coming at us, right?
You know, then the main gun on the vehicle goes down. When that happened, I had just happened to turn around. That's when I saw a puff of smoke come out the side of him.
RPG comes down and hits the turret. Like, Kyle's shoulder to shoulder with me. And the RPG, I don't know how it misses me, but it hit Kyle on the side. He keys on his headset and he says, I'm hit. And he sits down, like down, kind of slumps down in the turret. And I remember I'm holding my rifle and I look down at him and he's kind of slumped over and he's kind of, you know, limp and like incredibly pale.
At that time, I heard a snap. I remember he gets on the gun. He fires about a 10 round burst on his 240. And at that point, I remember looking to my right and I seen, because he's standing up, I remember seeing blood at his ankles at that point. So I glanced up and I just remember seeing him hunched over.
And I look across and I see Sam Holder, like he had slumped down now and he's kind of like, you know, he's a big dude, right? He wasn't going down the turret. But there's like blood like everywhere, all over him. And then the panic, the panic sets in. I'm like, we're gonna die.
And I was able to pull him down and he came down. It wasn't pretty, you know, he had already bled in, you know, internally, and his lungs had been filled with blood. And when he let out his last breath, it came out pretty violent. And so at that point, I knew that, you know, I would have to assume command of the vehicle.
I'm backing up like at full speed. Andrews is backing up at full speed. Holder's crew is still trying to get him out of there. It was such a panic, and like, I don't know, I remember like talking on the radio to Black Six, to Gil, and I'm like, I don't remember what I said, but I remember the feeling I had, and it was like despair. Like I had done something catastrophic and I wasn't getting out of this. And I remember like just panicking, and I don't remember exactly what he said, but his tone and the way he said it like pulled me back and it refocused me.
I got Paul on the radio and I was just like, hey man, I know you're hurting, but we still got a mission and the company's still in the fight and I need you to get your guys back. Right? I mean, it was simple as that.
I didn't realize Holder got hit. I didn't realize Kyle got hit or Armanderas got hit because I'm in the back of the LAV towards the end of the column, just kind of watching everything, doing my best to suppress the rooftops. We pull back out, and now we're on the main street. Paul Weber, Lieutenant Weber, randomly shows up, and he goes, help. And I remember thinking for a minute, like, what the fuck is this guy doing in the middle of the road? We're in a huge firefight here, and here he is, like just standing in the street. So it's wide open. And then he said it again, had a very desperate look in his eyes. So I jumped out and start chasing after Paul Weber.
Bamey ran out to join Paul and remain with his vehicle and his platoon. One of our corpsmen, Doc Navarrete, in the back of my vehicle, they were both ran out to try to help him.
I jump out, again, not knowing what I was expecting, anything like that. And I run to the first vehicle, but when I run to that vehicle, I can see guys on the rooftops. It's hard to describe the hissing sound, but at that time I knew there was fire going over.
I was like, this could be where I die, right here. And I remember thinking the only thing that I had to get me through it was I didn't want to be a coward in front of all my peers. So no matter what, I'm committed to this.
So we get back and like, we're kind of like at this casualty collection point, like kind of in some cover, kind of not.
I just remember people bringing people to us, so we were kind of like the ambulance, if you will.
All of a sudden, we got back, the door opens up, and everyone piles out.
That's when Armandaris actually got off of his stretcher and grabbed Bamey's saw and jumped out and started laying down fire with the saw, which was pretty epic.
So all the corpsmen were there. They were trying to help me. I was in a rage. They put me in the log, from what I remember. I got out because nobody was covering the vehicles. Nobody was suppressing fire or anything like that. They were just focusing on getting Burns out of the vehicle.
I remember seeing George jump out of the back of a vehicle. Trousers were all strip cut. They had cut him to wrap him up. He went and got another security position. Couldn't even tell he'd been shot.
I roll up and they were getting Kyle out of the back of the LAV at this point, and we get him laid out on the ground, still had a dip in the upper lip of his mouth.
I started doing an assessment, and I got down to the side of his flak, and there was an RPG sticking out of him.
And I'm shouting at him. You know, I'm trying to slap him in the face. Kyle, come on, man. And getting no response back.
And I remember seeing like rounds like popping off the dirt, like Burns and I were being shot at, you know. I was like, holy shit, like there's an RPG in him that hasn't gone off.
He pulls the RPG out of Kyle's side, and man, and like this wash of like just blood and fluid and stuff just pours out.
And you know, Doc was working on it best he could. Because I remember running by Kyle and patting him on the face and just hey man, it's gonna be all right.
So I got back in the log. That time they were bringing Burns to the log. I picked him up and I brought him into the vehicle, and I looked at him. I could just tell by his face he was gone. And he still had a dip in his mouth, just like Burns would have.
They load Kyle into the vehicle. They got George back there now. We can't get Sam out of his LAV because he's too big. We can't get him out. So that whole vehicle has to leave and go back to Bravo Surgical at Camp Fallujah.
I remember the Army, they ended up having tanks and whatever vehicles that were there lined up behind us. They ended up pushing forward, you know, taking our spots, you know, and then you could just hear the rounds going off, boom, you know.
And Cameron just said, punch it.
We took off and we started heading out like basically 1 million miles an hour. Nick was working up Armandaris, and I had a couple moments with Burns. I pulled a dip out of his mouth.
And then Navarrete. Navarrete came over the radio and just says, hey, you can slow down.
We'd heard on the radio that medevac that was needed. As we're traveling back out into the city, I see Adam in the turret of his vehicle, but I know that Adam is not the VC. He's the gunner, right? Like there's a reason that he's not up in the turret.
That was the the longest ride, you know, that I've ever taken.
Well, I remember as we were going down Michigan and we were trying to get to Camp Fallujah, I was calling in the Casevac on the radio. I just remember Pitcher looking at me, and I don't know whether he signaled like that or whether he was trying to shout at me or something, but Burns was gone.
And I think I started downgrading his casualty on the radio. Deceased Marines are routine casualties. They no longer urgently need assistance. It was a horrible feeling.
You know it's bad when someone's getting called in as an urgent surgical and then they lower the priority. That's how you know they passed away.
We just got out of this situation, which was like it went from normal day to just absolute chaos and hell. And I remember like we're driving into Bravo Surgical, getting into Camp Fallujah, and there's people playing volleyball. And we're passing people just going on in their normal lives. We were only 5 minutes away. It was just mind-blowing.
We got back to Bravo Surgical and we got Armadaris out. We got Burns out. But and then this is also on the recording too, is I had blood all over me.
I got blood all over my hands. Got blood all over my pants, and I never want to go through a day like that again. But going right back out there, no breaks. So
And I remember glancing over, and I saw a stretcher. I knew it was in Staff Sergeant Holder, and I remember just seeing an arm fall over. And I was like, oh man.
You know, there's like some pictures Scott Peterson took. You know, there's one of me, like there's blood all over my hands. They had to clean out my vehicle because it was full, like blood, like full of Kyle's blood. It was like a puddle. And I just couldn't go back in that vehicle right then. I couldn't do it.
The gallons of water that looked just like chum coming from the bottom.
We were literally covered from head to toe in blood. The people at Bravo Surgical were phenomenal. They got us these brand new camis, and they said, "Hey, if you'd like to, like now we can go. You can go view the bodies."
And I remember seeing Burns and Staff Sergeant Holders, you know, laying side by side. It was rough.
Burns' eyes were stubbornly open. That's when I finally just lost it. I just broke down. And
Captain Albin ended up coming out, and he said, "Hey, Solis," he said, "you don't have to if you don't want to, but we still need you in the fight." He says, "It's still going on. Do you want to go?" I said, "Sir, this is what I signed up for." And without hesitation, I remember going in there, you know, getting in back into the vehicle and taking off.
They dropped the wounded and dead off, and they went back out to the city. And I had to stay back there at Bravo Surgical. I didn't know what the fuck to do. I was by myself. I'm walking out of Bravo Surgical with a brand new blouse, no name tapes, no cover, no rifle. And I just happened to run across his first sergeant, chopping it up with a couple females, and he devil dogs me. He's like, "Hey, devil dog, where's your cover at? Where's your rifle?" I told him, you know, I apologize, First Sergeant. You know, all my gear is back with my unit in the city. I just got shot. 2 of my buddies just got killed. I'm on my way back to wherever I'm going to sleep. My apologies. He didn't say shit after that. Nobody said anything, and I just walked off.
I think Gil was the one that found out and told me. And I remember like kind of, we're in an Iraqi house again. It's like evening time frame, kind of dark-ish. So I couldn't see everybody's faces, right? I just knew I could see like silhouettes of Marines and outlines. And I told them like they're gone. And I remember somebody like openly like weeping, like sobbing.
Man, I mean, be honest, I broke down being on Kyle's vehicle. Of course, we were best friends at that point, just 2 little rednecks.
It was that somber quiet that really nobody was just talking. They was just kind of like in shock.
In that moment, that like during that period, it was like we're playing for keeps, like we might not make it home.
It was a somber mood, But I think the mood was more of anger.
Gil pulled us all in the house and had a conversation and said, you know, there's a time to mourn. It's not right now. We got a job to do. Let's finish it.
I had my moment, and I dried it up, and then that was it. And then I took a nap, and then I was back up on watch that night at some point. And then it was just another day.
So Kyle, you know, kid from Wyoming, getting to know Kyle, like we'd done like the workup together, you know, road marches together. We're in the turret all the time. But, you know, you spend time getting to know this guy and, you know, their like habits and like what they do. And like he would like constantly have a dip in. Like there were dip cans, Copenhagen long cut, like everywhere swirled about in that vehicle.
You know, he had logs of Copenhagen in his pack, and I knew he'd want me to have it. So I took every can I could. It got me all the way through the city. But yeah, he loved it.
The hard part was everybody believed in Sam. Everybody believed that dude was indestructible. And so now we are not even a week into this fight, and the Marines see one of the toughest, strongest, most influential staff NCOs in the company is lifeless, and they saw it. And the next thing is like, we got a long way to go, man. We got a long way to go. And we're telling the Marines like, he's gone, but he's not. He's still here. He's still with us. He's fighting with us right now. He wouldn't leave until the fight's over. Yeah, I miss him. It was tough.
You think about these things, you're like, man, like my decisions just led to the death of 2 Marines. There's not a day that goes by you don't think about them. Or like, what happened? That was 20 years ago.
And it was tough for me as a company commander to not be able to respond and support Paul there in that fight. Holder and Burns were they were just great Marines. And so it just hurts to lose good people, but they're warriors, right? They went out like warriors. They're in Valhalla right now. I'm happy for them, right? They lived the warrior's life, right? I'm happy for them that when the moment came for each of them, right? They did what they believed was the right thing to do as a Marine. And they sacrificed themselves.
And then you just kind of like try to regroup and pull your shit together. Because it's been like, you know, we'd only been in the city at this point. Like we went on the 7th, it's now the 11th.
I went and talked to Lieutenant Weber. And I said, hey, sir, I want to take his place. Like, I want to be the gunner on your vehicle. It was hard to jump in with that crew. Everyone was angry. And so, like, I knew coming in, like, okay, this is going to be tough. But what made matters worse was I went out to the vehicle and had to wash out most of Kyle's blood. I broke down. Like, it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Like, I knew, you know, where I was sitting. Like, he was there. That's where he took his last breath.
Lieutenant Weber just told me, like, hey, you know, you're gonna take over Staff Sergeant Holder's vehicle, and if you've ever been around a significant amount of blood, even when you clean it, there still is a smell.
This was, you know, our first experience ever seeing a brother, you know, die. And I think for all of us, it made us very, very aggressive. No one was sad when we would get into a fight, and no one was looking to avoid, you know, putting the hurt on, you know, terrorists. We're like a football team, right? We want to play the game. I hate that analogy because in a football team, win or lose, everybody gets to go home. We don't play fucking games. Our shit is serious.
Dudes are now out for vengeance and they want like payback. So we have to kind of temper it a little bit because they're itching to get into a gunfight. I mean, anytime we take contact or like a shot, like somebody from a house would shoot at us. All right, fine. We'd cordon the house, basically surround it. We would shoot illume rounds into the houses and hope that something would catch on fire, which eventually it would. Or to Cameron's point, he would joke, right? Like, you could follow like, oh, where first platoon was through the city because it'd just be plumes of smoke. I wasn't gonna lose another Marine because I was gonna like value somebody's property over a life. Well, lo and behold, like we literally like wrecked a block.
I mean, they were on their own turf, right? They knew they had secret passages, they had ways to get through, and we would clear it, and these insurgents would go out, circle back around in a place that we just cleared. And so during this time, I was like, man, let's pile stuff up and set it on fire so they can't come back in here. And it was actually very effective because you can't go into a house that's on fire.
I tried to keep my focus. I wanted to blow everything up. Deep down inside, I wanted to kill everything, but it was not gonna be healthy for my platoon to see that in me. If we didn't think about the next block, there was gonna be more casualties. There was gonna be more loss. Let's go to the next chapter. As hard as that is, we will mourn when we have time to mourn. Now we're going to kill. We're gonna do our job.
No, we were doing a lot of patrols. I mean, I spent so much time in the turret just driving around. It felt like I was just driving around in circles for just days and days and days.
I mean, we got in gunfights 2, 3, 4 times a day, every day for a long time. It was pretty constant for 30 days.
Hand grenade crates came in, crates of 30 and 60. Kirby, our company gunnery sergeant, would show up in the morning and he would drop off a 60 crate for us, and we would grenade into the courtyard, grenade into the house, grenade onto the second floor, hand grenade here, hand grenade there. We would go through 30 to 60 hand grenades a day.
We'd run through, man, my cargo pockets are bulging with M67 grenades, and I think I went through probably about 20 a day. You know, we jump to the next building, we blow it open, then we clear it from the top down. Then we climb back up, jump to the next one, clear it from the top down. I'm not just gonna run down the stairs and get smoked by the guys there, because once we make entry, they know we're here. So before we go down, we're throwing grenades down. That's where that meme came from. It's just where, you know, I'm dropping it down that stairwell. The funny thing about that picture is that grenade was a dud. And so people don't really realize this. I threw it down there, 1,002, 1,003, a minute, 2 minutes. I'm like, that thing's not going off. And I'm not going down there, right? Because it could blow up at any moment. Hey everybody, let's throw a couple more grenades down there. We threw, I think, 3 or 4 more grenades. All right, it's all clear. Move to the next building. So we didn't even go down.
And the funny thing is, the guy from the meme, he's an accountant. You know what I mean? So this huge blow up of this meme, and it's this badass Marine just dropping a grenade in a house in Fallujah, and then Debo, one of the greatest guys I know, in a CPA, wears a suit and tie at work every day. You know, just the irony.
But no, you know, that meme, I think I probably first saw it in 2011, 12, 13, somewhere around there. I remember when I saw it, I was like, oh wow, that's me. I thought it was funny. You know, it was M67 frag when you absolutely have to kill everything in the room or something like that.
There wasn't much time to just breathe, you know, except at night when you'd get a couple hours of sleep or whatever, but there was always something going on. There was never just quiet.
After the 11th, it was nothing but go. Casualty vacs all the time, and I was tired. I don't think I slept more than a few hours a night. I was getting calls from other platoons, other companies. I was pretty much like an ambulance vehicle on some points. You know, they're my brothers. You know, we did everything together. I wanted to take care of them.
Doing my job duties as a vehicle commander for that Casovac platform was just, hey bud, someone's hit. I need you to get from where you're at to this pause, pick them up, get them to Bravo Surgical. I was an ambulance, man. That's what we did.
Was that a fulfilling job for you?
Oh, man. A job? Not a job, man. Duty. A responsibility. I think that's when it really hit me what we were doing out there, and that people really were not coming home. Fucking worst job you could ever probably do, man. If you want to call it a job. That's the word you want to use, absolutely. I don't wish that on anybody.
So yeah, we're down like four in my platoon, and then, you know, we'd also lost my chief scout. And we lost him because he just like mentally broke. You know, like everybody's got a breaking point. We're like a week into this thing and we're like, what am I at? Like 25% of my platoon now has either been killed or wounded.
We were probably in the 20s per platoon, per scout. And then towards the end, there was like 8 of us because of people getting killed and getting wounded. And so we got really light, really fast. As their numbers dwindled, they instead of fighting ghosts, they were barricading themselves into homes, and it was just a sit and a waiting game. So they were waiting for people to go enter that home and to come upstairs.
Gil said, "Hey, I want to break open all these, doors and see what's going on in here." I don't know if it was Fish or one of the boys had popped a lock with some lock cutters, and RPK fire came right out of the door. Turns out they had locked themselves in there just waiting for that. And I remember seeing Fish just run. And then I told Dinger to just keep shooting. I said, shoot every door behind Fish as he's running. And that's how close we were. And I remember Fish looking at us like, oh my God. It was wild. I mean, who's gonna think you're gonna get locked into a building or, a garage door and you're just there. Your only mission is to wait for Marines to come and pop it. I mean, that's the kind of evil we were dealing with,
You're dealing with the most evil people. They want to inflict harm on you, so like having that constant alert, I would say it does wear on. It does.
The more people we lost and the more thin we got in the ranks, we definitely lost efficiency and effectiveness. And I think people got a little punch drunk. Taking risk is what you do, and I think sometimes people get a little numb to the risk.
I think in order to operate in that environment, you have to realize you're dead already. If you want to survive, you have to realize that my life is not the most important thing here. It's the lives of my buddies, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that they're safe and they're going to make it home.
And we're clearing each room. Dude jumps out, put about 15 rounds in him, drop him. As he drops, grenade rolls. Kingfisher, he got hit. Get Kingfisher, medevaced out, went back in, finished clearing the bottom floor, went up to the top, proceeded on providing OP, with the dead guy sitting downstairs in the bedroom.
In the city, there was so much going on. And when we'd lose somebody, you didn't have time to grieve or do whatever, because if you did, right, your mind wasn't in the right place. So you had to compartmentalize and you push all that back.
You have to shut everything down. You can't let your emotions control you, because at that point everybody's lives at stake. So if you're going off emotions and you're letting your emotions get the best of you, that's going to get somebody else killed.
There was the sickness around that city, with whether it was bodies or just it was just disgusting. And I remember
trying to get some chow down one morning, and I remember seeing a dog in front of us. As the sun started coming up, I continued to eat, and I was like, what in the fuck is that? And it happened to be a hand, but what really got me was the ring. That really brought things into perspective, that that hand and ring belonged to some gentleman, and watching a dog eat somebody's hand. I mean, that puts your kind of life into perspective. Like, you are in a place where if you're not on it, like, your hand's gonna end up in some dog's mouth. So, yeah, it was just, it was the most surreal thing I've ever seen.
Gunny Kirby comes by in the log, you know, checking on us, bringing us chow. And he asked me, I was like, did the dock clear you? And I was like, yes, sir. Yes, Gunny. So he was like, jump on. So I got my shit loaded up on the log and met back up with my unit that same day, that evening, a week and a half later. It was great seeing them. You know, we all gave each other hugs and, you know, shit like that, you know, caught up. But that day I came back, you know, we were engaged in another firefight as usual.
Oh, that's our fucking Raider too. There's still our fucking Mercedes sign on it. What the? Look at this guy. Look at him.
Start blasting it.
So let's shoot it. Let me shoot it. Shoot it.
There ain't nobody else around,
It's all
man.
bad. Can I shoot it?
Get in trouble? I'm in charge.
Can I shoot it?
No, I won't be in charge of the law.
I remember waking up. We all just somehow sat up, you know, out of our sleeping bags, and we looked around at each other, and Corporal Cada says, "Hey, fellas, it's Thanksgiving."
Thanksgiving in Fallujah, we cleared houses all day. We come back to the house and there's a banquet.
Gunny Kirby had gone back to Camp Fallujah, and he'd come back with a bunch of steaks and turkey and mashed potatoes and gravy and all this stuff. And Gil had everybody take a moment and remember the people we'd lost and think about our families. I don't even remember exactly what he said.
It was about reminding the guys that, you know, we are family, we are fighters. It was about appreciating the fact that you're alive. We were doing what we all signed up to do. And it was a touching moment.
We were still in the city and there were still firefights going on. We hadn't showered in 3 weeks at the time. We were dirty, we were sweaty. It was disgusting. We were all just grungy, and you know, we hadn't had any decent food. It was just all MREs, and it was so for them to bring us this Thanksgiving dinner, it was like a breath of fresh air. That it was by far the best Thanksgiving I've ever had.
It was that sigh of relief and that moment of normalcy that we lacked. It was like home in the middle of chaos.
I think the actual Thanksgiving day, you know, me, Fish, Mac, we went out on patrol. We were clearing houses, come across a house that had chicken and rabbit. We snatched them up, and it wasn't good, but it felt good because it was a home cooked meal. We made it on the stove right there in one of those houses.
You know, and I'm looking at these guys like, I got to go back out there as soon as we're done eating. You know, and so it was a peaceful moment. I believe the right word for it would be serenity. That's what you live and die for, you know, to have that brotherhood, you know. And so to me, that was one of the best experiences I've had, you know, for Thanksgiving.
Freaky, we're getting shot at again. I want to see.
Doc.
What?
Who's back there with you?
Nobody.
Who are you talking to?
The camera.
Bullshit.
I'm going crazy back here. Anyways, that's Willie the driver. He's up there.
This man, we get like no mail, no love from anybody, and you get all this stuff.
There's Debo. What are you doing? I told you we're not filming this.
Smeagol voice.
Why does it hurt us? We're be nice to them, and they be nice to us.
By the time November 29th got there, we'd already done pushed all the way through the city. We'd done cleared all the houses, and then once you got down to the bottom side of the city, it was more industrial.
MSR Michigan was like really rough industrial area. So we called it Funland because it was absolutely horrendous to go into, and we had to go into there at nights on a pretty regular basis.
Me, Fish, Mac, Blake, all of us were tight, like real close. 3rd Platoon in general, like all of us were tight, man. We were good friends.
We had moved into the Fallujah fire station. It was the city's fire station. We moved in and we started building it up and turning it into a patrol base.
This larger structure at the tip of my finger was the firehouse.
We were on the back end. We were on the downhill slide, and I mean we'd done it. We'd done pushed through the city, and we thought, hey, we're here. We done it. We made it through. The morning of 29th, you know, we're in the backyard filling sandbags.
It was again kind of like a normal day in Fallujah.
A few of the scouts went outside the perimeter there of the fire station. I had looked at Magaoay, and I kind of was like, where are you going? He just kind of shot me this look, just kind of mean mugging me, like almost say, don't worry about it. They went around the corner.
Blake, Fish, and Mac, they start clearing the houses on the other side of the street from the fire station.
Then, sure enough, I hear pop, pop, pop.
Hear all this commotion, just a lot of gunfire, a lot of grenades. The radio chatter comes across, hey, Mac's hit. Dropped everything we were doing, ran in, grabbed my rifle, grabbed my rest of my gear, got up. Me and Aldridge, we ran out.
I grabbed my stuff, and I was like, where? Just point.
So we heard machine gun fire and some grenades. And I'm like, what was that? Because it was like just on the other side of the wall. It was right next door.
Macmillan and Fish, Chris Anderson, they come running, and they are holding their guts.
The scouts are coming back. I think there's some injured. I was like, what is going on? I remember Mac and Fish coming around that corner, like holding their guts. And they had taken shrapnel to the gut.
Fish and Mac going through clearing room to room to room. And Blake's looking up at the steps, make sure nobody's coming down. Fish and Mac go into the first room, they clear it, they come out, they hear AK burst. And they come out of that room, and Blake's laying at the bottom of the steps. And the sergeant, you know, is trying to make his way up the steps. He throws a grenade down the stairs where Fish and Mac are standing, and that grenade blows up, hits Mac and Fish.
They're peppered, like they've got blood coming down. And I started working Fish up, and Fish grabbed my hand, and he goes, "You have to go get Magaoay." I'm like, where the fuck is Magaoay? He's like, he's in the house across the street.
And I'm like, what's going on? Tell me what's going on. And they're like, Blake's still in the house. And I'm like, what the fuck do you mean Blake's still in the house? He's like, sir, he's still in the house. I'm like, okay, let's go get him. I tell Dinger and Garcia to fire up the vehicles.
We literally jump on the vehicles as me and Sergeant Garcia position ourselves literally in front of the house. Very quickly, Eddie and the scouts were going to make entry into the house.
And so we sent another team to pull them out of there, and then it just became this sort of ever unfolding clusterfuck to try to get them back.
Me and Aldridge kind of looked at each other. I was like, hey man, I'll run point. You know, I said, hey man, I'll run point. We know they're in there. So we're gonna go in and get Blake.
And I got in the stack, and we were waiting, trying to figure out what was going on.
We turned into the courtyard. Front door was wide open. So I was like, nah, man, we're not going through that door. So we went around. There's another door on the right side of on the house. So we ran up to it, kicked in the door, went in.
And I was already seeing tracers going. It was just, there's smoke everywhere.
A lot of small arm fires coming down the hallway, hitting the walls, bam, bam, bam. So I grabbed my flashbang, tossed it into the little hallway. You know, it goes off. I take a peek. Somebody was standing upstairs just laying constant AK-47 fire, just machine gun, just tearing up the downstairs.
It was just a barrage of fire. I got down low. We started working our way into like this next hallway.
Looking up the steps, trying to see this insurgent so I can get some gunfire on him. As soon as I turned that hall, you know, I was shot. Blink of an eye. You know, bam, I'm standing up, and then I'm laying on my back, staring up. Aldridge standing over me. A pretty meaty gunshot through my left leg and practically like a graze to my right, about 4 inches deep on the right side.
I was already calling in a medevac for Fish. I called in the medevac for McMillan, and now I'm having to call in a medevac for Eddie. Gil gets on the radio and it's like, tells me, take a deep breath, Mettinger. You're doing fine.
I literally was just on my hands and knees going. I had no idea what I was even feeling for, but I felt these other Marines coming out, and I felt a body like they were attached to him, and I went in and I grabbed the other arm and started just dragging him out. Meanwhile, this firefight's going on like over my head.
These guys are shooting out the doors and stuff, and they grabbed Blake and we carry him out and they take him back to the fire station.
And I looked down and I saw gray matter coming out of Blake's ear, and I knew it was over.
I already know Blake's gone. And then we go to prepare for evacuation, and they get him out of there. And all the stuff that they stripped off his body, all his gear, is there in a pool of blood. And I just started screaming, get me fucking trash bags and get me water now. And Marines started to come help me, and I said, get out of here. Keep everyone away from here, because I didn't want them to see that. And I was just trying to wash it all away. And I threw everything in trash bags. And I wanted to get it out of the sight of the Marines. Because once again, it's not over. We got shit to do.
By the time this was all happening, the rest of our company was catching up. The doc had came through. He was applying the tourniquet on my leg. Like, oh crap, it's reality, it's hitting. And that pretty much took me out of the fight. Made it to the base, made it to Camp Fallujah. I went straight to surgery.
The pictures, Scott Peterson went in there to a whole one. I mean, the walls are Swiss cheese. I have no idea how we didn't receive more casualties. But we got Blake out and they smoked those fuckers.
It's dead ass silent. And you're trying to process it. And all you can do is, at the moment, try to understand as best as possible.
Come out of surgery, kind of in that 4-day doctor-induced coma. When I come to, Fish is in the bed beside me. Like, hey man, where's everybody at? Like, hey, what happened? Trying to catch up and then see. And then Fish had told me, Blake was killed and Mac was already life-flighted to Germany. Getting hit kind of changed my perspective. Being shot, being injured. Like I said, I thought I was invincible. I really did. I thought I was invincible.
Blake was really close to me. We had a very close relationship. So when that happened, it was tough. It was tough. Every day I question, what could we have done differently? And I wake up every morning thinking about him. And he was a great kid. I call him a kid because he was just silly. He was a silly guy. And he was a motivator. That was a rough day. And it tore me up, but we got shit to do. And yeah. And it took us 45 minutes to get in that freaking house. So that was the 29th.
It put a lot of strain on everybody, but Blake was being that big loss. We wanted to put our stamp on and leave our mark there for Blake. And so what we did is we found some paint and we literally took the sign off of the fire station and sprayed it, Firebase Magaoay. And we took that picture. I think we took that picture the day we were leaving out of the city.
The whole scene there now is changing very rapidly.
It was like, clear the city one way, back clear it again, clear it again. At that time, we're like probably into like early December, our role in the battle was kind of coming to an end.
I just remember things kind of slowing down. I remember us sitting on top of the roof one night, and it was just about sundown, and I remember us just both kind of taking deep breaths and looking at each other, and you could just smell death. I don't know how to explain it, but it was just death. And that was towards the end, and you just kind of realized like what you had been through, the chaos, the havoc, the destruction of everything that just happened.
We're moved out of the city, but where it really gets difficult is we're still that MSR task force.
And we started running MSR security patrols out of Abu Ghraib prison, so hitting the highway every day.
For another round, we're doing MSR security or MSR global, which is looking around the lines, kind of past and south of the city of Fallujah. Can't disclose that.
Wait to break out the tie horn.
Yeah.
You're on the air, sir. Live.
Why don't you wait and I'll say go?
That's it, Joey. Next boy. Next boy.
No means no! No means no!
No means no.
Christmas Eve. And yeah, so I was gonna celebrate.
Motherfucker, you got 3 beers. Give me every card.
What's up? Merry Christmas, bitch.
Smith always looks like he's
Smith, hey, you gotta fucking drive in like 2 hours. Not even 2 hours.
Someone woke me up and I said, fuck it. I ain't sleeping no more.
Hey, as long as I'm not on your vehicle, that's okay.
New Year's Eve, huh? December 31st, 2004, man. December 31st, we're doing the same stuff we've been tasked to do is out of Abu Ghraib, patrol them MSR, secure it, and make sure there's nothing nefarious going on the side of the roads.
I remember seeing Jason. He said, "Oh, I'm going out on patrol." I said, "You are? Like, what are you doing?" "I'm driving." I'm like, "Oh, all right, man. Hey, good luck."
We were supposed to actually be out on that mission. There was a miscommunication on the scheduling. I go to the vehicle, and Smith is in the vehicle. It's on. He's doing his preps and all that. I was like, "What are y'all doing?" He's on. "It's our turn tonight." I was like, "No, man, it's our turn." He's on. "No, man, don't worry about it. We got it." I was like, "Are you sure?" He's like, "Yeah, man, I'm sure we got it." I'm like, "All right."
So by that point, Gil had given me the dubious responsibility of being an LAV vehicle commander. So here I am. I'm a young artillery lieutenant, and I've got a section of LAV 25s. And that was just based off of the combat attrition to that point with vehicle commanders.
Jason Smith was a MIMS clerk, but he was also trained as a driver, and we were down drivers, and so Jason Smith was driving on patrols. His vehicle commander was my artillery officer, right? The artillery officer became a section leader.
Pulled out with my vehicle, and probably about 50 to 100, well, probably about 100 meters behind me, the second vehicle was pulling out. That vehicle was driven by Lance Corporal Smith, my intel clerk and the MIMS clerk.
And we were on the patrol, and it was coming to the end. We were gonna go. We were just actually going from being off the road to going back onto the road.
We're coming down, we're heading out in the right direction, and I'm sticking out of the vehicle. I got Smitty driving our vehicle. I'm about to reach up to the switch to my driver and let him know, hey, follow the tracks. Stay on the tracks. But as soon as I'm doing that, it's over.
All of a sudden I hear a big boom. I can smell smoke though, and Debo says somebody got hit.
I remember hearing the detonation. Looked back real quick, and it was just in my MVGs. It was just a cloud of black smoke. By the time I got back to that vehicle, I found most of the crew wandering outside the LAV, fairly disoriented.
No, it's pitch black. It's middle of winter time. It's really cloudy. There's no moonlight, no nothing. I couldn't see nothing. And so Devo guides us over there with a flashlight.
I'm kind of coming to. I'm checking the guys in the back. Bell's a little rattled. I get the thumbs up from Nate. I'm looking down at my gunner, at Ryan, good old Joe, and he tells me, thumbs up. So I'm yelling at him, Jason, crazy legs, city. I got nothing. It's radio silence from the front of the vehicle. And at this time, I can't see too well what the front of the vehicle, because the front of it on the top looked fine. So I pop out, I let Ryan know. I'm like, hey man, I got to get over to the front. And I'm coming around the vehicle, get over, pop the hatch. Oh, he's not responding. He's just not moving.
I remember finding the vehicle commander, grabbing him, asking him where his crew is, and we were missing one. And that was Smith. And he was still in the driver's hatch. And we opened it up, and I just remember this, the inside of the LAV was still kind of smoky, and I had the corpsman with me. He got in, and that's not an easy area to pull a Marine out of is the driver's hatch.
So we're trying to shake him awake, You can't see what happened to his leg. You can't tell that his lower extremities have been mangled.
And then in the course of trying to get Smith out, he ended up dying in the hatch. We couldn't extract him. And the next call I had to make was back to the company to say that the CASEVAC was now routine, and that was a sign to everybody that Smith was gone.
And it went dark after that. Next thing I know, we're at Abu Ghraib Medical Center. So a couple hours later, Willie comes in to check up on me. And he goes, how you doing, Vic? Good, man. What's going on? What happened? Where are we at? How's everybody doing? Like, where's Smitty, man? Oh, he's outside. He's waiting for you. Is he all right? Pats me in the back. He pats me in the back, and he's like, yeah, man. It's good. And I just see a black bag. What the fuck is this? What is this, man? I look over at him and talk to him. What is this? They zip him open. And I look at Willie and I'm like, I thought you said he was all right, man. I pound his chest. I hit Smitty on the chest, thinking I'm gonna bring him back or something. But he was gone. That's how that night went.
Jason was really beloved. Very much worth noting, he was a MIMS clerk. He's not an 0311. And when people talk like pogue this and pogue that, which is fun to do, and I definitely do it from time to time, don't get me wrong, but that's the biggest crock of shit I've ever seen. My mechanics, my MIMS clerks, my optics technicians in the company were some of the most badass Marines of the entire group, right? Jason didn't have to be driving that night. He volunteered. And, you don't need a MIMS clerk for Fallujah. He was rocking an M249 the entire way. So the embodiment of every Marine as a rifleman, I have seen proven true time and time again.
I can still see his face. Looking over Bobby's shoulder. Bobby Blanchard, another mechanic of mine.
I mean, me and Jason Smith, like I told you, just 2 months ago, we were in the back of Staff Sergeant Edelson's vehicle, joking and messing around.
And that one was a little different too, because we all got to say goodbye to Jason. We got to say our goodbyes and our respect in a very quiet manner, in a warrior type send off. And yeah, it was a hard thing to be a part of. It's harder now. You know, it's kind of really the first time I've ever talked about it, I guess. Yeah, that moment was humbling to be in that room with those men.
Yeah, Jason was a specifically hard hit to me and everybody. Yeah, so that yeah, that one hurts.
You know, Smith was our last casualty while the company was deployed. You know, obviously not an easy night, never an easy New Year's Eve going forward, I think, for anybody. And
you just try to honor those sacrifices as you go on, right? They went out doing Marine stuff. I try to remind guys that, like, yes, it's sad, it hurts, but man, they would not want you to be hurting.
You know, everybody's really kicked in the gut from it, and then that anger sets in. At that point, we were outside of Fallujah. We were not in contact hardly ever at that point. So there was a bottled up rage there that just didn't get out like it did in Fallujah.
Eventually, we pulled out of Abu Ghraib. We went back to Camp Fallujah. We washed our gear down. We joined back up with 1-3, and then we convoyed back to Kuwait.
The road march out of there was a fucking long one. I remember somebody kept saying on the net, "Are we there yet?" and causing some officer to lose his fucking mind. But it was like once an hour. Are we there yet? Yeah, I just remember it just being kind of a wrap up to one of the most like surreal things you could ever really experience.
Hey, we're back Kuwait, boy! Woo!
And then we got back on the ship, and I was back to shipboard life.
Getting on a ship, and instead of being packed in like sardines, having empty racks all over the place, right? Like knowing, oh, that's where so-and-so was sleeping before we got off.
You know, we got there as a team and we're leaving there a little less, you know, we're leaving there a little light. And seeing that visually, I mean, you know, it's quite shocking to think that many folks came there with you, and that's how many are not going home with you.
That was a 10-month deployment. All right, so 9 months in, post Fallujah, you know, we're on ship and we stop in Thailand. You know, and the Greeks used to do this purposely. They would take these warriors and put them on a small island and have games and feasts and get that shit out of their system. And that's what Thailand represented for us. And it was very healthy. We didn't approach it very healthily. It was out of control, to be honest with you.
I don't know whose idea it was to release a battalion's worth of Marines there. This probably isn't the decompression stop. That is probably the best choice. So you've got dudes on this boat that were in sustained combat operations for months on end, like, and then you pull into a place that's got endless amounts of booze. The wheels come off, right? We're like off the rails on a 3-day bender.
We had a lot of built up emotions.
When you're pent up and you're just let go, like you're stretching a rubber band and then you let it go, that sucker's gone.
And everybody went off the rails, like everybody.
It was a terrible idea, you know, for them to let us, you know, loose like that.
I also went over the top, and I'm not so proud of my behavior there, and I had a great time. But for me, like, it was a wake-up call too. That was the last time I drank.
Good experience overall. Then stopped in Okinawa for another 2 to 3 weeks. Then finally back to the United States.
I guess if you're a Fallujah guy, you wear that like as a badge of honor, right? I would imagine it was very similar to guys from Way City.
Fallujah was a life lesson that I have been spending the past 20 years digesting and trying to understand. I think without realizing it, I learned more about myself and more importantly, the human condition in that month than I have in my entire life. It was the best and the worst of humanity all in one setting.
It made me a man. It made me the man I am today. It was the best and worst time of my life.
I mean, it was, I don't know if you could say it was some of the greatest times of my life, but some of the worst times of my life. There's a sense of pride in it, knowing that you went through something like that. But then there's also the guilt you carry from not everybody coming home. You know, and I don't think that's something I'll ever get rid of.
Burns and I shared a pillow the night before. I love that kid like he was like a younger brother to me. I took the back of Burns' flak and where we had our names. I cut off his name tag. I kept that name tag, and after I got back, I ended up becoming a pilot. Everywhere I went when I went to work, I always carried it in my camis right on the left side next to my heart.
Well, yeah, 20 years later, I asked myself the question, what was it worth? Well, I think it was total, 50 people that died. What did their blood purchase? And I struggle with that because the answer is it's unfortunate.
Fallujah is an experience that has shaped who I am, for sure, but has not defined who I am. And Fallujah itself isn't necessarily what has something I remember or look back on, but it's the people I was with. Fallujah is not something I run from or try to avoid the memories of, but it's overshadowed by the love I have for the men I fought with.
Where the hell have you been? Oh my God, it's a long time.
It has been a long
time. This is a lot different from the Texan attire.
Yeah, this is where we lived. Why are they locking them up? Look at the blast shields they got on the turret now. Crazy. All this is crazy.
I just had my retirement ceremony Friday. Yeah, 2 days ago.
This is certified that Colonel Gilbert D. Warrens, having served faithfully and honorably, was retired from the United States Marine Corps.
You know, I think watching Gil sit there and retire, you know, after 39 years, you know, to see the amount of impact that he had on so many lives, and for them to fly across country to meet up one more time, it was an amazing feeling, you know, to be able to get together after all these years and see somebody, and it's almost like you never miss a beat with them.
Feels good to see guys, and I mean, like I say, 20 years, it feels like you just seen them yesterday.
There's a brotherhood there that will never, that I don't think can be broken.
But there's nothing like the Marine Corps. 100%. And there's nothing like the experience that we had. To be a part of that, to have the opportunity to experience that with this group of guys, to know that you're a part of that history, to know that they're with you for the rest of your life, in your heart, wouldn't change it for anything.
I think when you go through those experiences, it just builds a relationship that it's almost hard to explain, right?
I mean, Kyle was my hero. He, you know, I feel like he saved our lives because he didn't have to pop up. He could have stayed down in his turret and been just fine, but he popped up. He saved a lot of us that day. And once my son was born, the very first call we made was to Joe and Bob. Kyle's parents, and I asked him again if, you know, if they would be okay. If I named my son after theirs. So that was just a big, big moment. You know, that meant a lot. That his legacy is carried on by my son, and, you know, my son knows, and he is so proud of that.
My name is Kyle Fair Barker. It makes me feel honored to have his name. The one that saved my dad and many others. So, yeah.
We got guys that, several that have gone special forces. We've got guys that are lawyers, CPAs, businessmen, own their own companies, teachers. Some guys are just working guys, families. And that's very rewarding to see that they're like all Marines before us, right? Like they come home and they become, you know, Mr. and Mrs. America and regular citizens, and they carry this weight and they carry these special memories. They know they're different. Not everybody understands what they've been through, and that has its own impact on them. But life is good, man, and they still look after each other, and that's the amazing thing. Right? They're you know, they're still family.
Has no portico holding breeches to his door. A wise man has no pocketbook to label him as poor. If the crown and king fall burdened by the silhouetted sea, let me be free, let me be free. We crucify our saviors, but burn witches just the same, commanding through God like it's the devil's final game. But before we kill the witnesses that could vindicate our plea, let me be free. Let me be free. Let me be free. Let me be free. Let me be. Let me be free. The forgotten years of many now take refuge from the flood, like a soldier laying lifeless and baptized in his blood. If the war it rages on, beyond the doubts of certainty, let me be free. Let me be free. When the silence breaks the barrier that held the tide in place, the chimes of freedom crack the clouds that gazed upon a face. If a bolt of lightning trickles down and brings to bended knee, let me be free. Let me be free. Let me be free. Let me be free. Let me be. Let me be free. The changing of the guard brought forth a hidden mile from the laughter of a madman in the vertigo vile. If the captain finds a compass with a map to Galilee, let me be free. Let me be free. As the dove begins to fly above the cannonballs that fight, the answer blows then with the wind on an unarmed road of flight. And the disillusioned people all cry out in unity, let us be free. Let us be free. Let me be free. Let me be free. Let me be. Let me be free. Let me be free. Let me be free. Let me be. Let me be free. Let me be free. Let me be free. Let me be. Let me be free.
Someone woke me up and I said, fuck it.
I ain't sleeping no more.
Hey, as long as I'm not. Dude, I'm out of tape.
Where to take it off?
Hey, I'm out of like film, dude.
Where to take it off?
Process.